It's always an honor to have the opportunity to kick off one of my favorite Wellington events, and we're delighted to have you here tonight for the 10th annual All Things Wellington. When we started this event 10 years ago, and I'm just curious, are some of you here, did you attend 10 years ago? Raise your hand if you were here 10 years ago. It is so encouraging that you've not developed anything better to do on a Thursday night. I was here too. When we started this, we had a vision. We wondered if we could engage our parent body in a discussion of our curricular aspirations. And in our wildest dreams, we wondered if we could have what was essentially a pedagogy pep rally, the way other schools have pep rallies for football teams. Woo-hoo! That was our hope 10 years ago. Our fear was that no one would show up. Several teachers expressed concern 10 years ago that they would be ridiculed or attacked. We worried that if we shared some part of our vision, something we were thinking about, and it didn't actually happen, would people come back to us later on and say, whatever happened to that idea that you promised us? But at the heart of it, we were excited about being an original, thoughtful, energized school. So in our first event 10 years ago, we were here in this brand spanking new Thomas Family Dining Room with 20 staff members and 40 upper school parents, and we overlooked a patch out those windows where we hoped that someday we would have a new upper and lower school. I remember someone in the audience in the second All Things Wellington calling out, "Where's that building you promised?" Well, there it is. The production values at that first event were low. We had no PowerPoints, we had no videos. We did have a lot of Post-it notes, for those of you who remember that session, and we used cafeteria tables standing on their sides as stanchions to hold up our flip charts. What we did not know then was that this event would become a central part of the community's celebration of our aspirations as a school. It would be here annually that we would engage in exciting dialogue about the best ways to educate children. It would be here that the pedagogy geeks like me and the faculty would get a full fill of super psychedom about the work that we did and the community's excitement about what we did. So I want to thank you for coming to this milestone All Things Wellington. As is our nature tonight, we're going to do some things that are traditional and we're going to do some new things. Traditionally, we've explored new directions in our curriculum, and you're going to get plenty of that. But tonight, we're also going to do something new and a little bit different, which is to reflect on the past All Things Wellington presentations and look at how we've impacted this place with our forward thinking over the last 10 years. At the core of this evening and all other All Things Wellington, we ask the essential question, how do we best educate? This is a question that never gets old. It was a question that Socrates was asking in ancient Athens more than 2,000 years ago when he was my college roommate. It's a dangerous question at its best, and we remember that Socrates was executed for, among other things, his pedagogy. But it's a question that is too infrequently asked. For the last 2 years, I've shared with you thoughts about student engagement, our growing conviction that students do their best when they find their work deeply challenging and they love it. And I had an opportunity to discuss this at the TEDx Columbus this year. The video is available on the Wellington website, and I'm almost at 1 million views. I'm only 999,000 short, so let's get going. And in that talk, I shared with you research we've done here to understand what leads students to deeper engagement. We discovered 3 main factors. The first, through a protocol that we developed, was that we found out that students are likely to be more deeply engaged, that is, challenged and love it, when they and their teachers connect. And with that insight, we've revamped some of the work we do with some of our teachers to increase the techniques that lead to that connection. Second, we learned mobility in the classroom led to greater engagement. And with that insight, we started to replace our heavy, unmovable, rack-like sled desks with tables, chairs, and whiteboards that are all on wheels so classrooms can be easily reconfigured. We call it our Classroom of the Future project, and several people in this room have made that possible, for which we're deeply thankful. And third, and perhaps most importantly, we learned that autonomy, the ability for students to make key decisions about the direction of their studies, leads students to greater engagement. And with this insight, we have funded teachers to envision and design experiences that utilize student autonomy. Tonight, I'd like to talk about those three, I held up two fingers there, three factors, not from the student perspective, but from the institutional perspective. And I used these three concepts to try to help answer the question, how do we best educate? So first, connection. From a student's perspective, connection means believing the teacher is a positive part of their learning and their life. From an institutional perspective, let's think about connection as the quality of taking that which you learn in a classroom and attaching it to real uses in the world, connecting learning to real-world applications. For instance, learning to measure in a classroom using a ruler and paper, or reading articles about botany, mineralogy, geology, can only be a starting point for learning. Working in a garden, on the other hand, is an extraordinary way to connect learning with life. And you'll hear more about that in one of our presentations tonight. Second, when students discuss mobility, they're talking about the ability to stand up, walk around, use fingers, wiggle their toes, keep the blood moving, assemble and reassemble in different groups to fit particular tasks. When we talk about mobility from an institutional perspective, we might think about that as letting students move from classes nimbly to the wider world. It's one thing to study business functions and Siberia from a textbook. It's quite another thing to partner with Siberians face to face, building an actual business. It's a pedagogic mobility that marks the process, and you'll hear more about that a little bit later as well. Third, when students talk about autonomy, they are referring to their ability to make decisions about the direction of their work. If we talk about this institutionally, autonomy means that we as a school, especially our teachers, are free to explore educational directions that are outside the box, compelling, and original. This drives much greater learning because we have more passionate teachers working with engaged students. Now, sometimes the best way to educate is for a teacher to stand in front of a group of 15 or 20, or as in tonight, 300, and tell them what they need to know. Direct instruction. But sometimes there are other extraordinary and compelling places for teaching to happen. And All Things Wellington has always been a celebration of teachers exploring and imagining their own directions for teaching. While the traditional classroom is sometimes the best way to educate, sometimes the chessboard, the garden, the Skype, the trip, the mock law court, the real law court, the lab, the business are even better settings in which to educate. Sometimes. We are at an extraordinary crossroads in education where, on the one hand, there are amazing technological advances which promise to disrupt our educational model entirely, while on the other hand, most schools cling to standardization appropriate for a 1950s assembly line. Over the past 10 years, as annually marked at All Things Wellington, we've endeavored to navigate this intersection and come up with something superior to both of those choices. We fought and won independence, I always want a drum roll here, from Ohio's high-stakes testing tyranny. We have given teachers and students the opportunity to explore deeper connection, deeper mobility, deeper autonomy. I'm extremely proud of the work that we've done, and I'm really excited about the work that we are continuing to do. But for tonight, as the pedagogy geek in chief, I'm delighted to share with you our work that further defines what Wellington will be, while reviewing how we got there. So I want you to enjoy, and I hope you'll be inspired. So thank you.